Okay, so my computer decided to just freak out for some reason and quit. So I'll start back with what we were saying because I did not want to go back and record that whole video again. What we were saying was if you look at this as a function, this 9x minus 3, and you graph it, that the domain of that function would go from negative infinity to positive infinity. In other words, it would include all real numbers. Well, same is true with this second one, the negative 3x plus 15. Again, that is a linear equation, so it would go from negative infinity to positive infinity as well. Not last, but third, we looked at f times g of x. And again, because this is quadratic, again, when we're talking about the domain, we're talking about what it is on the x-axis. It would also go from negative infinity to positive infinity as well. What's interesting is when we get down here to this one, which again, our answer right here was x plus 2 divided by 2x minus 3. If we look at the graph of that, which is something we've not looked at yet, we'll look at it in chapter 6. But right now I want to go ahead and show you what that graph would look like. If you looked at the graph of that function, wow, this is like nuts, because you notice that this thing is almost touching a certain point here, but it never ever really touches it. And then the same thing is true this way. Like it gets really, really close to a certain point here, but it's like it never can touch it. And then all of a sudden it starts back over here and it does the same thing. It's like really close to a certain x value, but then it never touches it. So what is going on? Is there like an invisible force field or something right here in this particular area? Well, that's what I really want to look at here with this. And what I want to bring to your attention is maybe something that you have seen or thought of before, is that if I take, for example, 0 divided by 6, well, 0 divided by 6, if you put that in your calculator, you're going to get 0, okay? However, if you put 6 divided by 0, if you try to take that same 6 and divide by 0, then you are going to discover that this is going to probably come up as an error, or it will probably say something like undefined, okay? And so what in the world does that mean? That means that your calculator is telling you that it is illegal to divide by 0, okay? It don't know what to do with that. So what I want you to see is that this function will actually become undefined if, for some reason, that this denominator ends up equaling 0. It doesn't matter if the numerator equals 0, because obviously, again, it's just going to equal 0. But if this denominator equals 0, then we're in trouble. Okay, so I want us just to work that out real quick, and I want to show you something here. So we have 2x minus 3 equals 0. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides, which is going to give me 2x equals 3. And then in order to get x by itself, I'm going to divide by 2. And so this gives me an answer of x equals 3/2. Okay, now watch what happens. If I substitute this 3/2 back into this, so 2 times 3/2 minus 3, lo and behold, 2 times 3/2, the 2's are going to cancel out, and I'm going to end up with 3 minus 3, which equals 0. And if this equals 0 at the bottom, this function is undefined. So what I want you to understand, and what our graph is really showing us, is that this graph is fine. Let me go back to that real quick. This graph is fine as I'm going along the x-axis, but all of a sudden when I get to 3/2, which is actually 1.5, I want you to notice what happens here. Look at this. This line gets extremely close to 1.5, but it never ever gets there. This top line gets extremely close to 1.5, but it never ever gets there, okay? So what I want you to understand about this part of this is that this function right here, f divided by g of x, is undefined when x equals 3/2. In other words, x cannot equal 3/2, because if x equals 3/2, this function is going to become undefined. So this function is defined everywhere except at 3/2. Okay, so that's one of the things that we need to kind of understand, that you're going to have to do in college algebra, but actually your practice that you're going to have actually has a few of these as well. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that you understand, especially when you're working with division and you have a denominator, that you need to be looking to see if there's any places where that function will actually not be a function. It's going to be undefined. All right, thanks, and have a good day today.